we've talked about briefly on this channel a couple of times how important really regulations are. It protects people like you and me from the big corporations from essentially cutting corners to make, well, vast amounts of money. And nowhere is that more clear in what we are seeing at the moment from this unraveling of the whole food scenario. Look, two things are going to happen if these regulation, if this trade bill with the US goes through, which most likely it probably will, because again, MPs who quote wanted parliamentary sovereignty and scrutiny suddenly didn't want it to scrutinise the trade deal. And as I've said before, you will not know what's in this trade deal until the ink's drying on the paper. Be too late. And of course, this is going to be used as a massive win for Brexit. But of course, it will be anything but. For it will ensure the essential, our high food standards go to complete pot. So enjoy the good food while you can, because stuff from America, oh boy, it ain't going to be good. Not only that, but for our own farmers, they've got two choices. You either stay with your high standards and be render yourselves completely uncompetitive in your own home market, or you have to lower your standards as well, and then it starts this awful race to the bottom. And that's just the beginning of all this, because a lot of you say, oh, it's okay, I'll just buy the stuff that's not from the US. Many of you may or not be aware, in the US, again, there are laws specifically targeting this type of stuff, which we could also be looking at put into this trade deal. So for those of you thinking, oh, it's okay, I'll just buy the non-US stuff, it won't be labelled. So you will never know. And so on to this piece from The Guardian. This is exactly warning, once again, what we warned about during the referendum and this trade deal. It ain't going to be good, especially for us, because we see, again, Brexiteers seem to think that somehow we are this massive trading nation and that we can get what we want. America is bigger than us and can essentially throw its weight around. We are going to get absolutely screwed in these negotiations, and it ain't going to be good for us. Remember, their trade secretary has said that it is America's God-given right to take jobs from the UK and bring them to the US. And people, all these Brexiteers and the Brexit supporters were worried about, oh, these Europeans stealing our jobs. Yeah, the Americans are coming and they are going to steal jobs left, right and centre. And hey guys, it's what you voted for. So, Boris Johnson's US trade deal will make Britain a paradise for disaster capitalists. Good job, Brexiteers. Good job. The Conservative manifesto made a clear promise. It pledged that in the government's trade talks, we will not compromise our high environmental protection, animal welfare and food standards. Just 6 months after the election, the promise has been ditched. Our government is now proposing that chlorinated washed chicken, beef treated with growth hormones, pork from animals injected with a drug that makes their meat leaner called racopamine, and scores of other foods produced in the US by dangerous, cruel and disgusting means will be allowed into this country as long as higher trade tariffs are applied to them. The Trade Secretary Liz Truss has made it clear that any such tariffs would be removed within 10 years. It's impossible to see the American trade negotiators allowing them to pass in the first place. The US intends to secure a comprehensive access to our food markets while reducing or eliminating tariffs. This nonsense about higher tariffs is a blatant attempt to soften us up to sugar the toxic pill of US imports don't meet our standards. When I say sugar, I mean high fructose corn syrup. It is not as if our standards are woeful. By comparison to the revolting US practices in the US, our food rules laid down by the European Union are a heaven of sanity. As well as washing chicken flesh with chlorine to compensate for filthy conditions in which it is raised and processed, and injected dangerous substances into cattle and pigs. Big Farm and the Big Food in the US use 72 pesticides that are banned in the UK, and food colorings that have been linked to hyperactivity in children, and impose no limits on the amount of sugar in baby food, and permit cow's milk to contain twice the amount of pus than the UK allows. What this all means is that we will bring into this country food whose production is banned here. Either our farmers and food processors will be outcompeted, or our domestic production standards will be brought down to match. Some Conservative MPs attempted to insert an amendment in the agricultural bill last month to uphold the manifesto promise, but it was divisively slapped down by the government loyalists. The bill returns to the House of Commons on Wednesday. The US government argues that these matters should be left to consumers. We should be allowed to decide whether to buy cheap vegetables containing residues of pesticides that are banned here. But I suspect that rather than having to read and interpret the labels on everything we buy from shops, takeaways and restaurants, most of us would prefer to know that all our food on sale is safe to eat. Anyway, just as we did try to exercise such choice, the US also insists that all useful labelling be banned. Perversely, it has argued that warning labels are harmful to public health. And it doesn't end... Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go, sorry. So it doesn't end with food. In the same section of their manifesto, the Conservatives promised that in our trade talks, the NHS will not be on the table. The price the NHS pays for drugs is not on the table. The services the NHS provides are not on the table. The leaked dossier of trade documents released by the Labour Party last year revealed that the US was seeking full market access to the NHS. If the promised food and farming standards were a lie, how long will it be before we discover that the NHS pledge was also worthless? I suspect this has all been the agenda all along. The neoliberal extremists who populate the front benches have long sought to rip down our public protections and rip down our public services, rip down everything that stands in the way of the most vicious form of capitalism. A trade deal with the US will allow them to do so while disclaiming responsibility for the consequences. Once they have signed it, they can claim that. Sadly, their hands are tied. They could say that unfortunately the rules don't allow us to maintain food standards and force us to open the NHS to competition. Perhaps mistakes were made during the negotiation, but it's a done deal now. Enforced by legal instruments, and there's nothing that we can do. They know that they could never obtain public consent for these policies. A US trade deal would impose them without consent. Even parliamentary consent is unnecessary. The trade bill, which has now reached the committee stage in the House of Commons, makes no provision for parliamentary scrutiny of any deal. Parliament has no legal right under this bill to debate or veto a trade deal or even know what it contains. The bill also grants the government the Henry VIII powers to change the law on trade agreements without parliamentary approval. The governments of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are granted no formal role in negotiating or approving trade treaties. In other words, nothing is being left to chance. This is not democracy, this is elective dictatorship. To make matters worse, the US is likely to insist that the deal is enforced by an offshore tribunal. This allows corporations to sue governments if domestic law affects their future and anticipated profits. This tool has been used all over the world to punish nations for laws their parliaments have passed. It ensures that over time, legislation everywhere has to be tailored to meet the demands of corporate power. Far from taking back control, a trade deal along these lines with the US involves a massive reduction of our sovereign power. The government knows that accepting such a deal means no deal with the EU. US food rules are incomparable with EU standards. In the leaked document, US officials remark that there would be all to play for in a no-deal situation. I suspect our government sees it the same way. The pighead obscurantism of the UK in the current EU talks is at stark odds with the willingness to prostrate itself before US power. Dominic Cummings says he intends to stay in his post as advisor for Number 10 for the next 6 months. In other words, he will stay long enough to ensure that the transition period for leaving the EU is not extended, making a no-deal Brexit more likely. Just as Donald Trump seeks to erase Barack Obama's legacy, Boris Johnson and Cummings seek to erase Clement Attlee's, a much deeper legacy. It is not about sovereignty. It is not about taking back control. It is not about British values or British autonomy. It's about locking deregulation and the demolition of public services in place by means that cannot be challenged by either people or parliament. The combination of a no-deal Brexit to converse a US trade deal will allow the government to rip down a wide range of rules and protections and create a paradise for disaster capitalists funding the party, and hell for the rest of us. They intend to pursue this agenda regardless of the pandemic, regardless of a food standards petition that has already gained over 800,000 signatures. Regardless of the economic and political harm it might do, this is their game, and we must use every democratic means to stop it. And remember, Brexiteers, we said this is what would happen. I have to say this every time this comes up. Why are you so obsessed with not, taking rules from the EU, but you're somehow really fine with signing a trade deal that could do even more damage and force us to take rules that, as I said there, we don't even want to take? And if we try to exercise our own sovereignty, we will not be able to do it. At least in the EU, we could choose not to take those rules. But once again, hey guys, this is apparently what you voted for, and once again, the system of what this was promised to people, that this would make people's lives better, isn't going to materialise. And lo and behold, my prediction comes ever close to passing, that one day in the future, on a newspaper, there will be printed these words: "This isn't the Brexit we voted for." And it will not come from The Guardian, it will not come from any of anything else, it will come, I predict, from the most ardent cheerleaders possible, either the Daily Mail or the Daily Express. And I say this now, that will be the only time I will buy one of those newspapers.